transformation, will be able to enter into the subtle minds of all beings, and, because of his firm belief in the truth of mind only, will, by gradually ascending the stages, become established in Buddhahood. Therefore, Mahamati, let the Bodhisattva Mahasattva be well disciplined in self-realization. 9. Then Mahamati said, Teach me, Blessed One, concerning that most subtle doctrine which explains the Citta, Manas, Manovijnana, the 5 Dharmas, the Svabhavas and the Lakshanas, which is put in practice by the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, which is separated from the state of mind which recognizes a world as something outside mind itself, and which, breaking down all the so-called truths established by words and reasonings, constitutes the essence of the teachings of all the Buddhas. Pray teach this assembly headed by the Bodhisattvas gathering on Mount Malaya in the city of Lanka. Teach them regarding the Dharmakaya which is praised by the Tathagatas and which is the realm of the Alaya-ocean which resembles the ocean with its waves. Then the Blessed One again speaking to Mahamati the Bodhisattva Mahasattva said this. The reasons whereby the I consciousness arises are 4. What are they? They are the clinging to an external world, not knowing that it is of mind itself. The attaching to form and habit energy accumulated since beginningless time by false reasoning and erroneous views. The self-nature inherent in the Vijnana. The eagerness for multiple forms and appearances. By these 4 reasons, Mahamati, the waves of the evolving Vijnanas are stirred on the Alaya-ocean which resembles the waters of a flood. The same can be said of the other sense consciousnesses as of the I consciousness. This consciousness arises at once or by degrees in every sense organ including its atoms and pores of the skin. The sense field is apprehended like a mirror reflecting objects, like the ocean swept over by a wind. Mahamati, similarly the waves of the mind ocean are stirred uninterruptedly by the wind of objectivity. Cause, deed, and appearance condition one another inseparably. The functioning Vijnanas and the original Vijnana are thus inextricably bound up together. And because the self-nature of form, etc., is not comprehended, Mahamati, the system of the 5 consciousnesses comes to function. Along with this system of the 5 Vijnanas, there is what is known as Manovijnana i.e. the thinking function of consciousness, whereby the objective world is distinguished and individual appearances are distinctly determined, and in this the physical body has its genesis. But the Manovijnana and other Vijnanas have no thought that they are mutually conditioned and that they grow out of their attachment to the discrimination which is applied to the projections of mind itself. Thus the Vijnanas go on functioning mutually related in a most intimate manner and discriminating a world of representations. As the Vijnanas thus go on functioning without being conscious of their own doings, so the yogins while entering upon a state of tranquilization are not aware of the workings of the subtle habit energy or memory within themselves. For they think that they would enter upon a state of tranquilization by extinguishing the Vijnanas. But in fact they are in this state without extinguishing the Vijnanas which still subsist because the seeds of habit energy have not been extinguished. And what they imagine to be an extinction is really the non-functioning of the external world to which they are no more attached. So it is, Mahamati, with the subtle working of the Alaya-ocean, which, except for the Tathagata and those Bodhisattvas who are established on the stages, is not easy to comprehend. Especially by those who practice the discipline belonging to the Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and philosophers, even with their powers of samadhi and transcendental knowledge, it is difficult to distinguish. Only those who, understanding fully all the aspects of the different stages of bodhisattvahood by the aid of their transcendental knowledge, acquiring a definite cognition as regards the meaning of the separate propositions, planting roots of goodness in the Buddha lands that know no limits, and keeping themselves away from the discriminations and false reasonings that arise from recognizing an external world which is of mind itself, would retire into a secluded abode in the forest and devote themselves to the practice of the spiritual discipline, either high, or low, or middling. Only those are capable of obtaining an insight into the flowing of mind itself in a world of discrimination, of being baptized by the Buddhas living in the lands without limits, and of realizing the self-control, powers, psychic faculties, and samadhis. Surrounded by good friends and the Buddhas. Mahamati, they are capable of knowing the Citta, Manas, Manovijnana, which are the discriminating agents of an external world whose self-nature is of mind itself. They are capable of crossing the ocean of birth and death which arises by reason of deed, desire, and ignorance. For this reason, Mahamati, the yogins ought to exercise themselves in the discipline which has been given them by their good friends and the Buddhas. At that time the Blessed One recited the following verses. 99. Like waves that rise on the ocean stirred by the wind, dancing and without interruption. 100. The Alaya-ocean in a similar manner is constantly stirred by the winds of objectivity, and is seen dancing about with the Vijnanas which are the waves of multiplicity. 101. Dark blue, red, and other colors, with salt, conch-shell, milk, honey, fragrance of fruits and flowers, and rays of sunlight. 102. They are neither different nor not different. The relation is like that between the ocean and its waves. So are the 7 Vijnanas joined with the Citta. 103. As the waves in their variety are stirred on the ocean, so in the Alaya is produced the variety of what is known as the Vijnanas. 104. The Citta, Manas, and Vijnanas are discriminated as regards their form. But in substance the 8 are not to be separated one from another, for there is neither qualified nor qualifying. 105. As there is no distinction between the ocean and its waves, so in the Citta there is no evolution of the Vijnanas. 106. Karma is accumulated by the Citta, reflected upon by the Manas, and recognized by the Manovijnana, and the visible world is discriminated by the 5 Vijnanas. 107. Varieties of colors such as dark blue, etc. are presented to our Vijnana. Tell me, great Muni, how there are these varieties of color like waves on the ocean. 108. There are no such varieties of color in the waves. It is for the sake of the simple-minded that the Citta is said to be evolving as regards form. 109. There is no such evolving in the Citta itself, which is beyond comprehension. Where there is comprehension there is that which comprehends, as in the case of waves and ocean. 110. Body, property, and abode are presented as such to our Vijnanas, and thus they are seen as evolving in the same way as are the waves. 111. The ocean is manifestly seen dancing in the state of waveness. How is it that the evolving of the Alaya is not recognized by the intellect even as the ocean is? 112. That the Alaya is compared to the ocean is only for the sake of the discriminating intellect of the ignorant. The likeness of the waves in motion is only brought out by way of illustration. 113. When the sun rises it shines impartially on people high and low. So thou who art the light of the world shouldst announce the truth to the ignorant. 114. How is it that in establishing thyself in the Dharma thou announcest not the truth? If the truth is announced by me, the truth is not in the mind. 2. 115. As the waves appear instantly on the ocean, or images in a mirror or a dream, so the mind is reflected in its own sense fields. 3. Note 1. This question according to Sung and Tiang is Mahamati's. 2. 113 and the first part of 114 are ascribed to Mahamati in Sung and Tiang, but Wei gives both 113 and 114 to Mahamati. 3. This must have found its way here by mistake. For the ocean waves simile in this text is generally used to illustrate the Alaya's relation to the other Vijnanas, and not in connection with the immediacy of perception as in this case of the mirror images simile. End note. 116. Owing to a deficiency in conditions the evolution of the Vijnanas takes place by degrees. 4. The function of the Manovijnana is to recognize and that of the Manas is to reflect upon. 117. While to the 5 Vijnanas the actual world presents itself. There is no gradation when one is in a state of collectedness. 5. Like unto a master of painting or his pupils. 118.1 Who arrange colors to produce a picture, I teach. The picture is not in the colors, nor in the canvas, nor in the plate. 119. In order to make it attractive to all beings, a picture is presented in colors. What one teaches, transgresses. For the truth is beyond words. Note 1. This ought to belong to the preceding verse. Not wishing, however, to disturb the original notation, the translator has followed the text. In that which follows, the reader is asked simply to look for the sense and to pay no attention to the division of verses. 2. Samahita, samadhi, samapatti, ekagra may be understood as synonymous, denoting a state of consciousness where the mind is most intensely concentrated on one thought. It is the receptive state of intuition, rather than the active state of thinking. 3. Follow the sense and not necessarily the verse division as before. End note. 120. Establishing myself in the Dharma, I preach the truth for the yogins. The truth is the state of self-realization and is beyond categories of discrimination. 121. I teach it to the sons of the victorious. The teaching is not meant for the ignorant. What is seen as multitudinous is a vision which exists not. 122. The teaching itself is thus variously given, subject to transgression. The teaching is no teaching whatever if it is not to the point in each case. 123. According to the nature of a disease the healer gives its medicine. Even so the Buddhas teach beings in accordance with their mentalities. 124. This is indeed not a mental realm to be reached by the philosophers and the Sravakas. What is taught by the leaders is the realm of self-realization. 10. Further, Mahamati. If the Bodhisattva should wish to understand fully that an external world to be subsumed under categories of discrimination, such as the grasping and the grasped, is of mind itself, let him be kept away from such hindrances as turmoil, social intercourse, and sleep. Let him be kept away from the treatises and writings of the philosophers, from things belonging to the vehicles of Sravakahood and Pratyekabuddhahood. Let the Bodhisattva Mahasattva be thoroughly acquainted with objects of discrimination which are to be seen as of mind itself. 11. Further, Mahamati. When the Bodhisattva Mahasattva establishes himself in the abode where he has gained a thorough understanding of mind by means of his transcendental knowledge, he should later discipline himself in the cultivation of noble wisdom in its triple aspect. What are the three aspects of noble wisdom, Mahamati, in which he has to discipline himself later? They are imagelessness, the power added by all the Buddhas by reason of their original vows, and the self-realization attained by noble wisdom. Having mastered them, the yogin should abandon his knowledge of mind gained by means of transcendental wisdom, which still resembles a lame donkey. And entering upon the 8th stage of bodhisattvahood, he should further discipline himself in these three aspects of noble wisdom. Then again, Mahamati, the aspect of imagelessness comes forth when all things belonging to the Sravakas and Pratyekabuddhas and philosophers are thoroughly mastered. Again, Mahamati, as to the power added, it comes from the original vows made by all the Buddhas. Again, Mahamati, as to the self-realization aspect of noble wisdom, it rises when a bodhisattva, detaching himself from viewing all things in their phenomenality, realizes the samadhi body whereby he surveys the world as like unto a vision, and further goes on to the attainment of the Buddha stage. Mahamati, this is the triplicity of the noble life. Furnished with this triplicity, noble ones will attain the state of self-realization which is the outcome of noble wisdom. For this reason, Mahamati, you should cultivate noble wisdom in its triple aspect. At that moment, Mahamati the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, knowing what was going on in the minds of the Bodhisattvas who were gathered there, and empowered by the power added to him by all the Buddhas, asked the Blessed One concerning the doctrine known as examining into the reality of noble wisdom. Tell me, Blessed One, the doctrine of examining into the reality of noble wisdom, depending on which the 108 statements are to be distinguished. The doctrine depending on which the Tathagatas, Arhats, Fully enlightened ones will analyze and disclose the nature and course of false imagination for the sake of the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas who have fallen into the way of looking at things from their aspects of generality and individuality. Thus the Bodhisattvas will be instructed in the analysis and thorough examination of false imagination. And thereby they will have the passage purified which leads to the egolessness of things and persons, and get an illumination on the stages of bodhisattvahood. And further, going beyond the bliss of the tranquilizations one belonging to all the Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and philosophers, will attain the Dharmakaya of the Tathagata, which belongs to the realm and course of Tathagatahood transcending thought and in which there is no rising of the five dharmas. That is to say, they will attain the Tathagata body which is the Dharma intimately bound up with the understanding born of transcendental knowledge, and which, entering into the realm of Maya, reaches all the Buddha lands, the heavenly mansions of Tishita, and the abode of the Akanishtha. 12. Said the Blessed One. Mahamati, there are some philosophers. Note 1. That is, Dhyana, Samadhi and Samapati, which practically belong to the same category. End note. 12. Said the Blessed One. Mahamati. There are some philosophers who are addicted to negativism, according to whose philosophical view the non-existence of the hare's horns is ascertained by means of the discriminating intellect which affirms that the self-nature of things ceases to exist with the destruction of their causes. And they say that all things are non-existent just like the hare's horns. Again, Mahamati. There are others who, seeing distinctions existing in things as regards the elements, qualities, atoms, substances, formations, and positions, and, attached to the notion that the hare's horns are non-existent, assert that the bull has horns. There are, Mahamati, those who have fallen into the dualistic way of thinking, being unable to comprehend the truth of mind only. They desire to discriminate a world which is of mind itself. Mahamati, body, property, and abode have their existence only when measured in discrimination. The hare's horns neither are nor are not. No discrimination is to be made about them. So it is, Mahamati, with all things, of which neither being nor non-being can be predicated. Have no discrimination about them. Again, Mahamati, those who have gone beyond being and non-being, no more cherish the thought that the hare has no horns. For they never think that the hare has no horns because of mutual reference. Nor do they think that the bull has horns because no ultimate substance is to be obtained, however minutely the analysis of the horns may go on even to the subtlest particle known as atom. That is, the state in which noble wisdom is realized is beyond being and non-being. At that time Mahamati the Bodhisattva Mahasattva said this to the Blessed One. Is it not this way, Blessed One, that, seeing how discrimination takes place, we proceed to refer this to the non-rising of discrimination and infer that the horns exist not? The Blessed One said. No, indeed, Mahamati, the non-existence of the horns has no reference to the non-rising of discrimination. Why is it not so? Because there is discrimination owing to the idea of the horns. Indeed, depending upon the idea of the horns, Mahamati, discrimination takes place. And because of this dependence of discrimination upon the idea of the horns, Mahamati. And because of this relationship of dependence and apart from the Anyanya relationship, one talks of the non-existence of the hare's horns, surely not because of the reference to the horns of the bull. If again, Mahamati, discrimination is different from the hare's horns, it will not take place by reason of the horns. Note 1. Literally different and not different. End note. If again, Mahamati, discrimination is different from the hare's horns, it will not take place by reason of the horns and therefore the one is not different from the other. But if it is not different, there is a discrimination taking place by reason of the horns and therefore the one is different from the other. However minutely the atoms are analyzed, no horn substance is obtainable. The notion of the horns itself is not available when thus reasoned. As neither of them, that is, the bulls nor the hares are existent, in reference to what should we talk of non-existence? Therefore, Mahamati, the reasoning by reference as regards the non-existence of the hare's horns is of no avail. The non-existence of the hare's horns is asserted in reference to their existence on the bull. But really a horn itself has no existence from the beginning. Have therefore no discrimination about it. Mahamati, the dualism of being and non-being as held by the philosophers does not obtain as we see in the reasoning of horns. Again, Mahamati, there are other philosophers affected with erroneous views, who are attached to such notions as form, cause, and figure. Not fully understanding the nature of space and seeing that space is disjoined from form, they proceed to discriminate about their separate existences. But, Mahamati, space is form, and, Mahamati, as space penetrates into form, form is space. To establish the relation of supporting and supported, Mahamati, there obtains the separation of the two, space and form. Mahamati, when the elements begin to evolve a world they are distinguishable one from another. They do not abide in space, and space is not non-existent in them. It is the same with the hare's horns, Mahamati, whose non-existence is asserted in reference to the bull's horns. But, Mahamati, when the bull's horns are analyzed to their minutest atoms, which in turn are further analyzed, there is after all nothing to be known as atoms. The non-existence of what is to be affirmed in reference to what? As to the other things, too, this reasoning from reference does not hold true. At that time, again, the Blessed One said this to Mahamati the Bodhisattva Mahasattva. Mahamati, you should discard the views and discriminations that are concerned with the horns of a hare and a bull, with space and form. And also, Mahamati, let you and other bodhisattvas reflect on the nature of discrimination which they have of the mind itself. And let them go into all the bodhisattva lands where they should disclose the way of disciplining themselves in the manifestations of mind itself. 13. Then at that time the Blessed One recited these verses. 125. The world as we see it exists not, pluralities of things rise from the mind being seen externally. Body, property, and abode are manifested to us as of the Alaya-ocean. 126. The leaders talk about the Citta, Manas, Mano-Vijnana, the triple Svabhava, the five Dharmas, the twofold egolessness, and purification. 127. Long and short, etc. exist mutually bound up. When existence is asserted, there is non-existence, and where non-existence is asserted, there is existence. 128. Analyzed down to atoms, there is indeed no form to be discriminated as such. What can be established is the truth of mind only, which is not believed by those who cherish erroneous views. 129. This does not belong to the realm of the theoreticians nor to that of the Sravaka. The Buddhas disclose the way of self-realization.